Welcome to the Engineering Influence podcast presented by the American Council of Engineering Companies. Today we have a special program for you. On February 17th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, ACEC and FIDIC North America will launch the first session in a new webinar series exploring integrity in the Americas. The session will highlight Millennium Challenge Account Liberia, which was established by the government of Liberia to partner with MCC in a $257 million program of road and power investments in Liberia between 2016 and 2021. MCA Liberia successfully implemented the program, including developing and executing an anti-fraud and corruption and action plan and other protocols to support the program's integrity. Richard Stump of RS&amp, Inc., who is the chair of the FIDIC Integrity Management Committee, will host today's podcast, having a discussion with three panelists from the upcoming program. Christopher Williams, who is Senior Director for Anti-Fraud and Corruption at the Millennium Challenge Corporation, Shaka Dennis, former Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Millennium Challenge Account Liberia, and James Pierre, former General Counsel of Millennium Challenge Account Liberia. For more information about the webinar and to register, there will be a link in the show notes. So now I'll turn the mic over to Rich.
All right, Chris, I have a question for you. What, in your role as the head of transparency and integrity for MCC, what do you see as the most important actions MCC takes to set up the Millennium Challenge account agencies for success?
Hi, I'm Chris Williams, Senior Director for Anti-Fraud and Corruption at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. The most important thing that, or one of the most important things that MCC does to set up our partner organizations for success is making sure that there are very clear rules and requirements for the operations of the organization, and making sure that the hiring of people for the organization is done in a transparent and competitive manner. One of the cliches in Washington is that personnel is policy. If you don't have good personnel in the agency, it is really going to have problems in implementation.
Chris, thank you. So this is Rich Stump, with the FIDIC Integrity Management Committee and based here in the United States. Jimmy, I have a question for you. With regard to Chris's statement about personnel as policy, who within the MCA would you say was an exemplar of integrity and was instrumental in the success of your anti-fraud and corruption program?
I would say the CEO, our CEO, Monique Captain, and which is important that it was him, because if people see that your CEO is carrying himself a sort of way, he can lead by example. It's not just words, but his action speaks just as loud or even louder. So I would say the CEO set an example, because there are places like Liberia, and being that he was in charge of so many projects, people could come to him for influence, or did come to him for influence, to influence certain things, to go against our anti-fraud and corruption plan, or MCC and MC Liberia's policies, but he did not. And so I would say specifically, I'll point to the CEO for setting a good example.
Can you share a story with us regarding a difficult corruption or integrity challenge that you experienced and how it was successfully resolved?
One I can point to was a situation where during the procurement of the contractor for the pipeline, which one of our major projects, a certain party who lost the procurement attempted to try to sway the result by going through certain members in the government to try to influence MC Liberia. But due to the fact that our anti-fraud and corruption action plan required us to indoctrinate our board, and they were fully aware of our policies. So it just hit a stone wall when those people try to go to certain members in the government. And let me just say, our board is comprised of these very people that are going, that these the losing party was going to. So I would think that was an example of where it was very successful, that where the implementation of our anti-fraud and corruption plan thwarted and attempted corrupt activity.
Great, Jimmy, thank you. Chris, what would you say are some of the greatest lessons learned from the success of the Liberia Compact that can be taken forward by MCC with upcoming Compact recipients?
Well, it is very important for MCC and any MCA to carry out a intentional anti-fraud and corruption strategy. MCC has a formal anti-fraud and corruption policy that applies to all recipients of funds and is available on our website. And the policy requires MCC to work with our partners like MCA Liberia to do a risk assessment of the specific risks of fraud and corruption for the entire program, to assess and prioritize those risks, and then to create an action plan to follow to try to mitigate those risks. And that sort of intentional effort that is jointly carried out by the owner or the donor organization and the implementing institution, I think is critical, because without going through that process, frankly, the team's just not going to be aware or have top of mind of what the most serious risks are.
Chris, thank you very much. Shaka, turning back to you, I'm going to ask you a similar question to what I asked Jimmy with regard to an integrity or corruption challenge that you experienced during the execution of the compact. Can you tell us a little about something very challenging that happened to you and how it was successfully resolved?
Well, thanks, Rich. I think that there were a few challenges that we had involving attempts by bidders to circumvent the process. There were instances where the projects were as small as hiring an individual consultant to an $18 million design build FIDIC yellow book contract for a new water pipeline. In one instance, actually two instances on that project, we had challenges from the supervision procurement, where there was a firm who tried to, I would say, strong arm us into, or shame us into publicly shame the MCA and the staff of the MCA that we were not transparent by going to newspapers. And although we had, MCA and MCC publishes the procurement, they publish the results. I mean, the results are all published on who was selected. But instead of the supervision consultant or the bidder coming into, let's say, the MCA and requesting, let's say, a meeting to find out, why they were not selected, they went above and beyond in terms of trying to shame people publicly. But the wall held. When I say the wall held, because the members of our anti-fraud and corruption team involved government officials who they tried to go to plead their case, and it went nowhere. On the works contract for the pipeline, similar thing. That's an $18 million job. So naturally, there's a lot of upset people. And one of the things that we did, the CEO and I, we use an independent consultants as the technical evaluation panel. So they flew them in from various countries and they evaluated the proposal. They gave the results and recommendations to MCC and MCA on who should be awarded the project and for which reasons. And those were vetted by everyone. So the wall held. There was nothing they could do and it just fell off. And one thing I'd like to say about the anti-fraud and corruption procedures and policies of MCC is they have the backing all the way up at the local level, at the country level, all the way up to the US ambassador who would back up MCC. So it's not just the local team, MCA, local government, and the US representatives, the country directors, but it's also the US Embassy is also standing behind the MCC team and the MCA team.
Excellent. Shaka, thank you. So, Jimmy, I'm going to turn the next question to you. Looking back over your 5 years as general counsel for the Millennium Challenge account in Liberia, what did you find as the most professionally rewarding aspect of being a leader in the MCA?
The most professionally rewarding aspect of being part of the MC Liberia team is, honestly, it's just the skills that you acquire over the period of time. Because due to the nature of an MCA, you're, as a general counsel, you're involved in so many aspects of the entity when it comes to HR, procurement, even finance. So for me personally, I personally didn't have that much experience from the procurement aspect of it, and I learned so much. I learned so much over the 5-year period in terms of the details, the different types of procurement, the different procurement rules, and how it goes about, how that went about, the appeals process, all that. So I would say that was one of the rewarding aspects. Just like how it's not just for me, also just talking to other members in the team, because learning the different aspects of the projects, when you have to learn about the energy sector or the road sector. I think it's you get to enhance your skills and you come out a better person, a better professional after you leave an MCA. I had a counterpart in the MCC's Office of General Counsel, and they always joke that every lawyer that across the MCC, you leave a compact a much better lawyer than when you enter. And I can completely say that is 100% the case. I 100% agree to that.
Fantastic. Jimmy, thank you. Shaka, I have the same question for you. What did you find as the most professionally rewarding outcome of your 5-year involvement as the Deputy CEO of the MCA Liberia?
Well, Rich, I'll tell you, after 30 plus years working in the US and working for US company and around the world, coming to Liberia and heading major projects here, one of the most, I think the most rewarding thing was completing some of the big projects where I know that from the beginning, some of our counterparts in MCC had serious doubts that we were going to finish and we were going to complete these projects. Working with the staff that we have in Liberia, many of them who have not worked with Americans before, using American standards, American way of thinking. So it was a little difficult for some people to understand when a schedule says that we need it on a certain date, it means we need it yesterday, not day after tomorrow or next month. The most rewarding thing in my experience, in my career, has been this particular project I worked on, which is the design build of this 5-kilometer design build Yellow Book pipeline, 48-inch pipeline. And I would say that because we had a great team. We had a great contractor that was selected through a good procurement process that knew what they were doing. We had a great supervision consultant. We also had good support from MCC and mutual respect, because I will tell you, it was, and I can say this freely also, the guys on the MCC side, they were backed by the Corps of Engineers. And I know when the first time we sat down and had meetings, and they realized that we had people sitting on both sides of the table that had a lot of experience and knew what they were doing, there was such a calm and relief that we are going to make it. In addition to that, to be able to do a project like we completed last year during COVID, a design build, ordering parts from China, from Asia, from all over the world, to come in, and we had a team that sat down and we decided that nobody is taking vacation. We can't afford to leave the country, come back. We're all going to stay, and we'll take a vacation when this is over. We're going to build this project through the rainy season, through the mud, through all the problems that we had dealing with COVID, going out, coming in. No one got sick, no one died. So I would say for me personally, in my career, that was a great accomplishment because we had a great team and great support on both sides. MCC had reach back support from the Corps of Engineers. We needed structural work. We needed geotechnical input because MCC has a small team. MCA has a small team. We don't have many engineers in our group. So for them to have reach back support, for us to have great supervision help and a great contractor, that to me was the highlight of my career and my MCA experience.
Shaka, that's a great story. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Chris, turning to you, as someone sitting in the mothership organization, what are you most professionally proud of regarding the accomplishments of the Millennium Challenge account Liberia?
I'd say that especially hearing Jimmy and Shaka talking, I think the thing I'm most proud about is the collaboration and teamwork between the multidisciplinary MCC team that was working with MCA Liberia and the MCA Liberia team. Without that collaboration, without that level of respect and trust, the program's just not going to work well. So I think it's also the other thing that I'm particularly proud of is the level of support that the relatively small multidisciplinary MCC team provided to MCA Liberia. Prior to the pandemic, there were often trips to Liberia by MCC staff and by consultants that were working directly for MCC. And they could sit face to face with their colleagues and with the MCA contractors, the contractors that were working directly for MCA, and do site visits. As a funding organization, I think being able to physically visit with your colleagues, your counterparts, and physically visit the construction sites and see what is actually going on is very important. During the pandemic, of course, other approaches were adopted, like lots of photographs, videos. Some of our countries use drones and use of local subcontractors, but I really don't think that there's anything that can substitute for physical, face-to-face, boots on the ground presence by the owner or a funding organization.
Great, Chris. Thank you very much for those thoughts. One thing I'd like to turn to now is back to the anti-fraud and corruption program that was put in place by MCA Liberia. Jimmy, what would you say was the most valuable skill or outcome that you received as a lawyer being involved in the creation and execution of that anti-fraud and corruption program?
One of the most skills that I've learned, and I've actually have had a chance to implement it since the cutback ended, is being more aware and more up to date with regard to conflict of interest policies, confidentiality policies, because prior to the compact, these are just things you learn in school, but you don't, you learn, but you, during my legal practice prior to this, you didn't have that much opportunities to implement. But as a result of the anti-fraud and corruption plan, and being involved in all the disclosures for under our conflict of interest policy, which forms a part of the anti-fraud and corruption plan, that has allowed me to become more aware and more in tune dealing with those issues, which I've had to deal with subsequent to the compact in terms of dealing with entities and boards, or there was an instance where a board member wanted his company to sign a contract with the entity from the which he was a member of the board, and I had to interject and explain how it wasn't this, and talk about disclosures and mitigating risks and stuff like that. So I would say just the opportunities that I learned from the anti-fraud and corruption plan, specifically the conflict of interest policies, and implementing that on an almost daily basis over 5 years, and taking that forward with me has been very helpful.
Great, Jimmy. Thank you for that that really insightful answer. So Shaka, the same question to you. What did you find the most professionally valuable outcome with regard to your involvement in the creation and execution of the anti-fraud and corruption program?
Well, I mean, Rich, to be honest with you, I really enjoyed watching the lawyers work. I mean, you know, Jimmy and Chris, I mean, the same in my professional career before. I mean, as a consulting engineer, the legal aspects, and they're there to keep everyone out of trouble, to keep everyone aware of what the policies and procedures are. And so they're really, for me, they're always kind of on my the right-hand person that I have, and I lean on the most to make sure we're always following have proper guidance, you know, in procurement, and especially that's one of the main things, you know. I mean, procurement is for anti-fraud and corruption. Procurement is one of the weak areas where you always have to shore it up, and procurement specialists alone can't do it. So for me, it's just watching the legal guys and having them to support us. You know, I learned a lot between the legal guys and you know, and also procurement, but more the legal, because they really guided the whole process and kept us out of trouble. So yeah, it was an enjoyable experience. I did learn a lot.
Wonderful, Shaka. Thank you very much for that answer. So before we adjourn, I just want to thank all three of you, Chris, Shaka, and Jimmy, for your time in this preliminary discussion as we get ready to have a really in-depth global conversation with our webinar participants on Thursday, February 17th at 12 o'clock Eastern. And this will be, again, the first inaugural webinar within the FIDIC North America series on integrity in the Americas. So it's going to be a fantastic discussion. All three of you have a lot of important information to bring to the table. And we're going to be setting a very, very high bar for our compatriots in Canada and Mexico to follow. So with that, thanks again for your time. And we are looking forward to speaking with all three of you again, as well as with whomever joins us on the 17th of February.